Hi drummers, hope you're well. Here's a little video for you about learning coordinated grooves in songs, right? So this is one of the biggies in the lessons that I teach face-to-face and on Zoom as well. This is one of the biggest sort of maybe, what's the word, like stumbling blocks or like hurdles that drummers hit is they're learning a song, right? And it's all going well and they get to a certain part of the song and there's a groove in there which is more coordinated, that has some hand and foot coordination, it's a bit more detailed, and basically you just can't do it straight away at full speed. Now, that's when you very often the students in a lesson will utter one of those two immortal phrases that drum students say. One is, "This is hard," and the second thing is another variation on that, which is, "I'm struggling with this." Now, when students say that, I've been doing this job for quite a lot of years, and my opinion by now, after kind of seeing hundreds and hundreds of people come through, when drummers say that, that is basically their brain like resisting that feeling of the challenge, right? And the thing is, when you're saying that, usually it's because you're trying to play that coordinated thing at a level that isn't currently reasonable. So sure, like you're going to hit things, everybody does, man. I've been playing the drums for 27 years and every day I hit things where I can't play it straight away. That's fine. So what you need when you hit a new bit of a song which is tricky is you need a strategy, right? You need a way of getting into it. We're not magic. This is where sometimes I think unhelpful ideas of like how our brains actually learn songs, like sometimes the idea of sort of talent and natural ability gets very muddled up here and is kind of unhelpful in a lot of ways. So when you hit these coordinated sections, you just need to apply a bit of strategy, man. You basically need to start at the beginning and build it up, and it's pretty much always simpler than you think. Now, there are two main ways of doing it, and I'm going to demonstrate this now. You don't have to be doing this song at all or this series of grades or anything, but I'm just going to use as an example the chorus of You Make Loving Fun by Fleetwood Mac, the version from Trinity Rock and Pop Drums Grade 2. And it's the chorus groove. It sounds like this. This is the full version. So it's a perfect example, I think, and it's just one of those grooves that has a lot going on. For a grade 2 groove, it has the right stick on the ride, the left stick hitting a backbeat on the snare, a bass drum part that isn't necessarily super straightforward, and then it's got the left stick playing some tom-toms as well. So if you're a grade 2 drummer and you just try and play that all at once, yes, it is indeed extremely hard and you will be struggling. So again, you need a strategy. Now there's two ways to go about it. There's the second, I'm going to describe them both. The second way I way prefer, and if it's at all possible, do the second one. But the first one I'll deal with first. And the first one is very, very simply, and it's kind of the all-time classic, is you just play unbelievably slowly. So this is about showing your hands and your feet the combinations, right? I personally don't always enjoy doing this, but sometimes it is the only way, and it does work. It's quite hard to stomach, and it does require a bit of willpower, but it does work, honestly. So for example, with this groove, what you do is you just go through and you show your hands and your feet one moment after the other, right? So you kind of basically get your brain and your hands and your feet, your neurology, your nervous system to light up, to fire in the right order a few times. It sets the precedent that you then will build on as you speed up, like that pathway for playing those combinations of rights and lefts already exists, and you can then build it up from there. So for example, in this groove you'd go crash with kick, ride cymbal on its own, ride cymbal and snare, ride cymbal on its own, and so on. And you literally go as slow as that. It can be even out of time at first. Say the combinations out loud and you just play them. Now, it does work. Like I said, the main drawbacks for me are it really doesn't have a very musical feel to it at all. You necessarily, with complex grooves, have to go so slow that it's out of tempo, and often if you know the song and you have a feel for it, this is completely, often can feel completely detached from that. So yes, it works, but it isn't the most musical way, and it can be, unless you have a certain mindset, it can be pretty sort of hard going, So that's one way of doing it. So I just want to put that out there. The second way, I way prefer, if you possibly can. This doesn't work for every groove, but most grooves you can do some form of this. And this is, you build it up bit by bit by looping the pattern, but playing at a slightly quicker speed, and playing a very simple version of it and building on it from there. And I really, really love doing this wherever possible. Now I'm going to do it with that groove there from the chorus by starting off with the ride cymbal. Now, again, if you're not learning the song and you don't have an interest in it, that's fine. It's the principle of the thing here. You can literally use this video if you're learning that bit as well, but it's the principle is important here. So the right stick plays on, if you're right-handed, plays on the ride cymbal, a straight eighth note pattern. I'll just play you the full groove again one time just for reference. It sounds like this. And just to be super clear, I don't see people will often see a drummer playing this and they'll say, "Oh, you make it look easy. You're talented, blah blah blah." I don't see myself as any of those things. Certainly not talented. I was definitely at a time where I was completely clueless. I had my first drum lesson a lot of years ago. I walked out of it. There's absolutely no suggestion at all that, like, my drum teacher, dear old Roger Odell, said, "Oh, that guy is going to be a professional drummer." There's no suggestion of that whatsoever. I just basically built it up over time. So first of all, let's get those ideas of, like, you have to have natural coordination some way out of the window. It's basically nonsense as far as I'm concerned. You just build it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the simplest possible version of all that stuff. And looking at the chart there, the simplest possible thing I think is the ride cymbal part, which just plays eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You getting that? This groove is a 2-bar phrase, which you can see when it's written out. So a really simple place to start is just to play. If there's any part of it which is like really repetitive, really obvious, like dive into that. So as soon as you look at this, the ride cymbal for me jumps out straight away. It's just playing eighth notes, quavers. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I'm assuming if you were at this level, grade 2, like playing eighth notes on a ride cymbal would not be unreasonable. So start there. That's fine, man. You've got your foot in the door. You're off and running here. You're not sitting there looking at it going, "Oh, this is hard." You're playing something. You're up and running, man. So great, good start. Let's have a look at the part and see what else we could add in. Well, if we have a look at this part, we can see that the snare drum plays what we call a backbeat, right? So a basic big hit on 2 and 4. So really our hand part here is really, it's a basic rock beat, isn't it? It's the straight eights feel. So now we're going to play the ride cymbal and the snare drum part together. No feet, no tom-toms, none of that stuff. We don't have to do everything all at once. We're just building it up level at a time. First of all, we did ride cymbal. Now we're doing ride and snare. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. With me so far? So basic straight eights feel, isn't it? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so far so good. I'm guessing if you're at grade 2, cool. So, all right, we've got a beat that kind of works. Now you could play it with the music and it would fit. It's not the full part, but it is something, right? It's a good second level to get to. Now let's go to the kick drum next. You can do these in different order, but this is what I would do on this one personally. Let's go to the kick drum. Now there isn't that much kick drum in this. There's a kick drum on beat 1. Remember, this is a 2-bar long phrase, a bar being 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So there are 2 bars in this. The first bass drum is on the first beat of the first bar, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right. So again, really crucial point. We're not getting ahead of ourselves here. We're just adding literally one note more than just playing the hand part, ride and snare. And that was that bass drum or kick drum on the first beat of the first bar. You with me so far? I'll do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, cool. So now we really have got a groove that will work in some shape or form along with the music. It's not the full part yet, but yeah, okay. So it's starting to resemble it. We're building it up one level at a time. Great. And then the next little thing you could add is, well, there's only one more bass drum in the whole 2-bar phrase, isn't there? And that is on what we call the and of beat 4, right, the last eighth note of the first bar, right? So taking what we just played and adding that extra bass drum in now on the and of beat 4, would be playing the full part of the ride cymbal and the snare and the kick. No tom-toms, but we'd be playing the full ride, snare, and kick part. That would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Does that make a bit of sense? So there we truly do have a part that not only would fit with the music, actually it's starting to sound quite nice. That pushed kick drum on the end of beat 4 is it's quite distinctive, I think, and for me, quite starts to conjure up like the feel of this chorus. Actually, boom, gat, but boom, gat, dat. So we're starting to kind of get something that resembles the groove here. Do you see what I'm saying? So we've built it up a level at a time. Started with just the ride, we added the snare, we added just the first kick drum, and now we've added the second kick drum, and now we've got, like I said, the full part for ride and snare and kick. All right, so we've got. So hopefully you can see here that's everything for those 3 parts of the kit. We're ignoring the tom-toms for now. And here's the thing, man. If you're a grade 2, it might well be that at that point, it certainly would have been for me, that's quite a lot of stuff, right? And so for a little period of time now, maybe a week or like between your lessons, whatever, maybe this would be a good chance to stay at that point for a bit and consolidate, right? So it's tempting to now start piling all the other stuff on top, but you know, you've got to give this time to ferment, man. You've got to let your brain make friends with it a little bit. And haste could often be our enemy when you're building this stuff up, man. But you've got a groove that works there. So I would go with that. And what you need to do now is just process that, work with it, reinforce it, consolidate it, get it to the point where it's starting to really feel natural, right? So I would personally suggest stopping there for a bit, having a little play with that, play along with the track, slow it down if you need to, but have a little jam along with the music. See if you can get that sort of feeling good for a bit. That might take a day, it might take a week, it might take you 3 months. Who cares, man? Like, you'll still get there in the end, and you'll certainly get there ultimately faster than someone who's just bashing at full speed, hoping and declaring it to be too hard. So you've built it up, man, bit by bit. That's great. So say that a period of time has now passed, right? So you've been playing along quite happily with that. Maybe you've been doing it for, I don't know, let's say 2 weeks, and you're starting to feel comfortable doing that, right? Again. You might say, all right, so I'm kind of feeling like that's becoming automatic. That's starting to become my second nature. So what I'm going to do now is add in the tom-tom parts. And again, this can be a bit at a time. Let's have a look and see like which one element we could now add in. Well, let's just add them one at a time. So the first element is the first tom-tom. As you can see on the music, that's a hi-hat. Sorry, it's a hi-hat. It's a high tom hit. And that will be on the and of beat 3. It comes just before the snare drum, right? So if we add that into our mix, here it comes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You getting that? We're not trying to suddenly add in all the tom-toms. We're just adding in one little element, right? I'm going to show you something, a big secret with you. Now, I would say high 90% of all, this is nothing against anybody, and I would do exactly the same if I was in that position as well. This is just part of the human condition, I think. High 90% of students learning grooves like this just go too far ahead. Like, even in the sessions when I'm leading this process, they'll still try and go ahead of the speed that I'm going at in terms of adding stuff in. They'll still try and go ahead, and they'll get frustrated and declare it to be hard, even when I'm talking them through this process, right? So go slow. And top tip, if we're ever having a session together, go at the speed that I'm describing it, right? It's pointless going faster, especially when you're having a session with somebody else. You know, again, no disrespect to anybody, but it's pointless going faster. I'm not going to be impressed with you just going faster than I'm describing. Just take your time, man. Take your time. And so, like, even if that one extra tom-tom, like, again, I'm thinking of like when I was at grade 2. This is pretty tough, man. So I'm thinking back to when I was at this level. That one extra tom-tom, that might be another little period of time. So you can then run the song a whole load of times, get a feel for it, just with that one tom-tom in the mix. Here we are. and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you can sit with that for a bit. That might be another week, man. It might be another, 1 minute practice. It kind of all depends, but like, don't be in a rush, man. Make sure that's nailed down first and feeling comfortable before you then move on to the next bit, right? And when you're ready, the next bit, there's not too much to go, is there? The next bit is a tom-tom in the same position in the second bar. So again, on the and of beat 3, just before the snare drum on 4. So we're getting there now, aren't we? We're playing the full ride cymbal part, the full snare drum part, the full kick drum part, and we're playing the full high tom-tom or first tom-tom part. There's one more tom-tom to go, but we're not going to worry about that yet. So now I'm going to play, like I just said, the ride cymbal part, the kick, the snare, and the high tom part, which is always on the and of beat 3. Here it comes, 2-bar phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and 4. Last time. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Again, if you're at that point, great. Sit with that for a bit. Use that as the groove for the song. I mean, you're totally in the territory of a groove here, which will sound great with the music now, even if you're just playing. Brilliant, man. That's going to be great, isn't it? So totally fine if you're at that point. Stay there, consolidate, enjoy it, make friends with it. Take your time with it. Remember that, like, this is a labour of love. Like, you got to give these sort of grooves some respect. Give them the respect they deserve. You build it up a bit at a time, man. Like, and at each level, stop, consolidate, enjoy it. Like, play it for a bit. Just get a feel for it. Do you know what I'm saying? That's super important, I think. And of course, this all takes a bit of patience. I get that, but patience is one of your main weapons, I would say, in developing your drumming skill. If not your best weapon. So then the last note of all, the last element we're going to add in is the floor tom. You can see here on the and of beat 4, right? This will be a left stick going across to hit that floor tom. So we've got all the stuff that we had before. And then on that last note, the and of beat 4, bottom, that floor tom's going to drop. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's the end. Playing that is the end of a fairly long process. But here's the thing, like, the point is, it's actually a really enjoyable process. And the big principle it's based on, which is massive, is the principle of the improvement zone, so-called. So what we do when we just try to play this coordinated groove out of nowhere, and we say, oh, this is hard, I'm struggling, it's like we're not really giving it a lot of respect. We're just sort of playing and hoping that somehow it'll all come together, and kind of at the, like, worst end of it, kind of assuming that our natural coordination will somehow magically step in and help us here. Well, what we've done on the other hand with this is we've really worked it up bit by bit, haven't we? And we've gone always at the point where there's a little, when we move up from one level to the next, we're in that improvement zone. We've just pushed on from the level that we're currently at. So it's never a big leap. We never have that feeling of like, oh, this is horrible, because we're going only a tiny bit further than the level that we're currently at. Do you know what I'm saying? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through, build up that whole groove again by looping it and just playing one element at a time, adding one element at a time, like I was just describing. And we'll see here that we always stay, as you do this process, in the improvement zone. You consolidate and you are happy at one level before you go to the next level. And then it's only ever a slight feeling of discomfort, if you like, a slight challenge on each level, rather than the unreasonable challenge of suddenly trying to play everything at once at a lively speed. So I'm going to go through the whole thing, man. Here it comes. So we started off just with the ride cymbal, which plays eighth notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? Okay, now we're going to add the snare on 2 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4. And now the kick on beat 1 every second bar, 2 and 3. So just the first kick drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. First kick. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Kick drum. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now we're going to add the second kick on the and of beat 4. First bar. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, assuming we were happy with that, and only if we were happy with that, we'd add in the first tom-tom hit, high tom, and of beat 3, first bar, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You getting that? Okay, and only when you're comfortable with that, we add the next tom-tom in the same position in the second bar. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, only if we're comfortable with that, and only when we are, the whole thing. So that floor tom and a beat 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 4 So hopefully you can really see and appreciate this process. It's a labour of love, man. You build it up a bit at a time. But the crucial point, which I really want to repeat, is there's never a moment where you're asking your brain to take a massive leap. When people say, this is hard, I'm struggling with this, it's almost always because they're asking their brain to take a big leap. They're asking something unreasonable of their coordination at that point, man. You've got to build it up bit by bit. Now, clearly, as you do this more and more, and you get more experience on the drums, this whole process does get faster and faster because your general coordination, there's lots of great science which supports this, right? Your brain now, as a drummer's brain, will develop, and it will start finding this whole process easier and easier and easier. I think that's one of the things that gives drummers who've just been playing for a long time and practicing in this sort of deliberate way to build up coordinated grooves. It gives often the illusion of, like, quote unquote talent or natural ability, or quote unquote you make this look easy. It really is just work, man. But work in the right way, and work where it isn't ever massively unpleasant. It's only work where you just challenge yourself a little bit from one level to the next. And that's really exciting, actually, for me, because when you sort of realize that, you realize actually this isn't impossible and it isn't horrible. It just requires a good strategy and sticking to that strategy, and just, again, living in that improvement zone, always just challenging yourself that one little bit more. And hugely important point, if you're at a level and you're starting to feel that tension coming in of like, oh, this is tricky, stay at that level. Even if you've got the ride cymbal, the snare and the first kick, and you're going, oh, this is tricky, totally fine. Of course, that's cool. Stay there. Give these grooves the respect they deserve. Just spend some quality time with it. Build up each level. Do you know what I mean? And there's a reason here. There's a number 2 on the front of the book. This isn't a beginner groove. This is something that would take some building up, man. So just take your time with it. I hope that's helpful. That's certainly the strategy I would use as often as I can. There are times when you have to do the first thing I mentioned, like go really slow and do kind of play everything and just talk yourself through it, which is usually less enjoyable. The great thing about this strategy is you can kind of loop it. It has a musical feel, even if you're just playing the simplest thing, like in that case, just playing the right cymbal, it still has a musical flow to it, doesn't it? So that's a really good thing to do if you possibly can. And I really hope that's useful. I think that is basically it. And I've been playing the drums for a very long time, I guess, relatively. I've, like I said, 27 years. And I find myself using that process basically almost every day. I think people think that when you've been playing a long time, you become like immune to that. You just play everything instantly. No, definitely not, man. Like, you know, all these videos I've done where I've sort of learnt these pieces and played them, like loads of times, including that piece. I've sat with it until done that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like built it up a little bit. So yeah, it's a little bit of work, but it's enjoyable work. And if you get your strategy right of, again, always going that little bit into your improvement zone, then man, it's always fun, right? It's always enjoyable. So that some of the opposition that students sometimes come out with at this point is, I find this all a bit hard. I just want to enjoy it. Cool, that's totally fine, man. Good luck to you. You don't get to be good at playing the drums then, like in this way. Do you know what I mean? So that's just a choice, man. Like, no disrespect to anybody. Good luck to everybody. But that is a straight choice, isn't it? Like, if you want to learn this and develop your skill and become good at playing the drums, great, that's there for you. If you don't want to, you just want to go and jam on the kit, enjoy yourself, great as well. Awesome, man, great. If you're doing this though, that's the process, right? So if you, I think, do one thing or the other, don't be half pregnant, so to speak. Like, either learn these pieces, learn these grades. If you're learning a song, say, right, cool, I'm gonna do it, or say, I'm not going to do this, that's fine. If you're going to do it, I'd say use that strategy and go with it, man. It's awesome. And when people do that, when, I've got students who use that way of building it up and it works, it's unreal, man. Like, it's awesome. You see them come back a week, two later, they got grooves going, they're flying. You think, man, like, I'm out of a job here. And it's funny because being a drum teacher, that is ultimately your job. I've realized that over the years. Your ultimate aim is you do yourself out of a job. So your ultimate aim is the student just wanders off and goes, actually, I get how to sort of build all this stuff up now. I get how to learn this sort of stuff. And maybe it sort of morphs into sort of being a bit more of a sort of coach kind of thing rather than a teacher. You don't sort of feed the information to the student anymore. So it's really lovely when you see students doing that. And that process that I've described there is one of the biggies, man. One of the main things that students who wander off, do me out of a job, basically, that's one of their main features, is they understand that process and they're able to build things up in a sort of enjoyable, when they're able to build up coordinated grooves in a sort of enjoyable, fun and productive and efficient and effective way. So I hope that's useful. Thanks for watching as always. Well done if you made it to the end of this. This was long, wasn't it? And yeah, thanks a million. Please like, share and subscribe. If you do subscribe and you want to get a notification every time I upload a video, which is pretty much every day at the minute, please click the little bell icon. And thanks to all the amazing people who've supported this channel. Can't tell you how much I appreciate that. If you valued the content that's been on here, please support this channel. I've got a Buy Me a Coffee support page, which you'll find linked in the description below. There's two main ways to do it. One is by becoming a monthly supporter, and I massively appreciate the guys who've done that. Thanks so much to everyone who's done that. And the second way is to just with a one-off support donation. So both of those are massively appreciated. Thanks so much. The more people do that, of course, the more content I can put up, the more it'll grow, the more I can get everyone's requests answered, the more I can answer your questions, do the things you want to see, help you in more ways. So I really, really hugely appreciate that. Please follow Mike Barnes Drums on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. And thanks so much for watching, man. I massively appreciate it. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Thanks a million.